All right. We are going to get started today and we're going to continue our discussion about fractions. So we're going to review what we have learned about fractions and then we are going to keep talking about fractions. So when we are talking about fractions, let's just remember and just take a second and think, what is a fraction? A fraction is not just a number. Hold on, let me fix that. Okay, there we go. A fraction is not just a number with one on top of another. Like, that's not a fraction because a fraction actually means something. When you think about a number line, okay, and a number line is just helps us count. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it keeps going. It just keeps us track, and we know that those numbers are actual things. We've got 1, 2, 3, on and on and on and on. So numbers are actual things that we can hold. And this right here is a number. This is actually what we call a whole number. So that's our whole number, our whole. Fractions are saying, okay, well, what's the deal right here? Okay, how do I get from 0 to 1? And the answer is fractions. We're saying we have our whole, whatever that whole is, whether it's markers or candy bars or pizza, but we're taking that whole and we're breaking it into smaller pieces, equal size pieces if it's going to be a fraction. So in between here, let's start doing, let's take this piece right here, this rectangle or this area, and let's just make it bigger. Okay. Okay, so we know just on our number line, this right here is 0. This right here is 1. Okay, that makes sense. Here's 0, here's 1. And we're just taking that little piece and we're making it bigger so we can see what's going on in between. So a fraction is saying, hey, that whole, we've broken into smaller pieces. So I've broken this fraction, or this whole, into halves. And now I've broken it into quarters. And that right there are my fractional pieces. Those are my fractional pieces. So on your paper, draw this little bit of your number line right here. So draw it. And then I want you to label, what is each of these pieces called? What is this piece called? This piece called, this piece, and so on. Okay, well, remember, a fraction is how many pieces is our whole broken into? Well, our whole is broken into 4 pieces. And how many pieces do I have? Well, this is just this piece, it's just 1/4. And this piece right here is actually just a 1/4 too, just 1 out of 4. This is 1 out of 4. And this is 1 out of 4. They're the same piece because they're the same sizes. Well, gosh, that's a little annoying. So how could we label that? Well, another way we could do it is we could say, okay, well, this is 1/4. I have 1/4. Well, now I have 2/4 because I have 2 of them, 1, 2, 3/4 and 4/4. Okay. And there I go. Now I want to take a second and I want to look at this right here. Right there, my numerator is the same number as my denominator. And so that means we've reached our whole number. We've reached our 1. Because again, it's saying, hey, in order to get to 1, you need 4 pieces. Oh, and you have 4 pieces, so you're there. So it's the same time. Whenever you have your numerator the same as your denominator, it's equal to a whole, your one whole. So for example, if I have 3/3, 4/4, 5/5, or even 20 that's equal to 1. Okay. So again, anytime you have your numerator smaller than your denominator or less than your denominator, it's less than 1. It's right in this area up here. When your numerator and your denominator are equal, you're right here. Okay. What happens if I got another 4th piece? And actually, let's just do that right there. It's the same size, it's the same piece, another 4th piece. Well, what is my new, what would I do if I were continuing to count them? How many 4th pieces would I have? Well, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But my my denominator doesn't change because it's still 4 pieces in order to make a whole. So this right here would be 5/4. Anytime I have my numerator greater than my denominator, it means that I have more than 1. So less than 1, equal to 1, or more than 1. And I could keep going. I could say, here's a 1/4 piece, and that's 6/4. Here is a 1/4 piece, and that's 7/4. And here is a 1/4 piece, and that's 8/4. I want to stop right there and look at this 8/4. Okay. 8/4 is saying, okay, if you want 1, you need 4 pieces. Well, I have 4 pieces in 8/4, and I have 4 more because 4 and 4 make 8. So how many wholes do I have? Well, here's 1 whole. Here's another whole. So how many wholes do I have? I've got 2. So this right here is equal to 2. So these red fractions are the same thing as this area between 1 and 2. You can have a fraction that shows more than 1. That just means your numerators need to be greater than your denominator. So now, on your paper and pencil, I want you to show me what would 5/3 look like. Draw me in an area model or a tape diagram. What would 5/3 look like? Okay. Hopefully you paused the video and you drew 5/3. So I'm going to show a couple different ways. I could do a fraction as a circle. Okay, so I know I'm going to break my whole into thirds. Okay, and I have 5 of them. So instead of shading them, I'm actually going to count them just to make it really clear. 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 pieces. I've got a whole. This is equal to 1. Yes. Wait, but I have 5 of them. So that means I would need to draw another fractional circle and divide it into thirds. Well, okay, so I left off at 3. 4, 5. So when I have that, I could show 5/5 or 5/3 like this. And I could say, I don't have 2 because I'm still missing this piece right here, but I have 5/3. Or I could show it like this. I could say, here's my tape diagram. And this is my whole because it's 3 pieces. And I have 2 more pieces. Because after all, we know that 3/3, which is this area right here, plus, don't know why that was red, plus, let's go back to green, 2/3 is equal to 5/3. Because when I'm adding, I'm just looking at those numerators as long as my denominator is the same. Or if you also wanted to show it, you could have also done, let's do an area model. Okay. Okay, so here's my thirds. Okay, I've got 3 for my whole. Well, that means I need to make another whole. And I'm not being super careful because they're not even. When you do it, I want you to be really careful. And I have 5/3. And that's how I would show 5/3. So now let's take a break. Let's change gears a little bit. And let's go back and review, decimals. Now remember, decimals are fractions. They're the same thing. They're just a specific type of fractions. So fractions, you can have a whole bunch of different types of fractions. Decimals is a little bit more narrow. When we're looking at decimals, let's look first at the tenths. So let's say we have let's start off with a fraction. Okay, so here's my number line, but remember, I'm taking that number line and I'm zooming in the area between 0 and 1. And it's saying, okay, well, a decimal breaks the area between 0 and 1 into how many pieces? 10, into 10 pieces. So I'm going to do it really quickly. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, not quite equal, but you've got the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I have tenths. So I could label this. This is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. And I want you labeling this. If you have to pause the video to label your number line, do that. 9/10. Oh, I made a mistake. Here, we're going to get the eraser. Don't worry, okay? You can always erase. Mistakes help you learn. Okay, and this right here is 10/10. And remember, earlier in our video, we said that if the numerator and denominator are the same, then it's equal to 1. Well, that's in fractional form. What does it look like in decimal form? So this is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10. Notice how they're the same names. 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. And 10/10, it wouldn't really make sense to put a 10. It wouldn't make sense to go 10/10 because a lot of times if the zero, or if it's after the decimal point, we don't pay attention to that zero. Oh, gotta carefully erase it. Well, that's the same thing as 1/10. So if I want to show 10/10, then that's where it quickly becomes just 1. Okay, so when we were talking about fractions in the form that we're used to with the numerator and denominator, we said you can have a fraction that is more than 1. Well, that's the same thing with when we write it as a decimal. So let's take 2 plus 6/10. Okay, that's saying I've got 2 wholes and then I have 6/10. So I'm almost to 3 wholes, but not quite. So that would be 2 6/10. Now, let's change this 6/10 into a decimal. Well, I would have 2 wholes. I have all the pieces required for my whole. Plus, now 6/10 is the same thing as 6/10. Okay, so then that means that my whole would be 2 6/10. Let's draw a picture of that. So pause the video, see if you can draw a picture of what would 2 6/10 be. Okay, for me, I think immediately of, okay, well, I know I have 1 whole. I know I have 2 wholes because right here I've got 1, 2. That shows the 2 wholes. Now I have my 6/10, so I'm going to change colors. I've got my 6/10. Now it means I'm working on another whole, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm going to draw my whole, and I'm going to break it into tenths. 1, 2, oh, this is skinny. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I've got 10 in there. Whew. But remember that 6/10, it's the same as a fraction. It's saying I don't have that whole. I've got 6 of my 10 pieces. So let's do green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, this is showing 2 6/10. When you are doing this, I want you to really think about, what do I have, how many wholes do I have, and how much will I need in order to get to my next whole? So, I mean, when I'm looking at this, how many tenths do I need to get to 3 wholes? Well, I need 1, 2, 3, 4. I could even write 2 6ths plus 4 tenths. I'm sorry, 2 6/10 plus 4 tenths equals 3. So remember that. We're not going to go in too much more into detail on that, but that's important to remember. Now, what I want you to do is draw me a fraction, or draw me a picture for 1/5. Okay, so I would have my 1 whole, and I'm not quite there. So, and my next one is not a complete whole, but it has how many tenths? It has 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm not going to get lazy. I'm going to keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 tenths. And this right here is equal to 1 and 5 tenths. All right, we're going to stop right there. You did a great job. Make sure that you think really about what a fraction really is. You're not just bound to a top number and a bottom number. It means something. There's something you could hold that could also be a fraction. All right, goodbye.